Hello, Jennifer here at Peacock-Smith. I'm ready to do another episode of Basics. Today we're going to be talking about cutting fabric. We use in so many of my projects, we use shapes of fabrics. And so I keep a stock of these in the fabric department. It's really lovely to have a stash of fabric of all kinds of shapes and sizes, and we'll talk about where to get the fabric from and what you can and can't use another day. But I also always have on stock shapes. Here's my, and I bag them, as you can see. That's the brown circles. We've got yellows, we're just starting on the yellows in teardrops. We have turquoise circles. And I cut everything into circles or teardrops for stock. If I'm cutting a specific project, obviously I might cut to that. But when I am cutting for stock, then we cut just in these basic shapes. It freaks Julie out because she says you don't know what you're going to do with it. But everything that I do with collage or jewelry or earrings, we use one of these two shapes and we cut them into whatever size. So today we're going to be talking about how to cut freehand. I cut everything freehand. Not everybody is comfortable with that, and so we shall do tracing and other ways of cutting in a minute. But today we're going to be talking just about cutting freehand. So all the fabrics that I use are either bought or cut from secondhand clothing, secondhand scraps, and they're usually cottons or polyesters of a very average thickness. We're not talking here about velvets or upholstery fabric. We'll do that in another episode. At the moment we're just talking about your average run-of-the-mill cotton fabric and how we cut that. And so the first thing I need to say is it needs to be flat, and we don't like creases. That's not to say we should have none. This is very creased, but if I cut a shape through that crease, we're not going to have a very flat shape, are we? And who wants to iron all that out? So this has come off the edge of something else. It happens to be folded in 4. I cut everything in 4. Why 4, you ask? If we cut 1A, it takes much longer. B, it's also much thinner and a little bit floppy, whereas 4 gives us a really thick, solid piece to work with that isn't too thick. So if we're going to do circles, I'm going to look at that and think that is a really nice shaped circle. So I'm going to cut it in half. Again, this is only for people who are confident enough to do this, but please practice. Find some cheap fabric and practice, because it's actually really an awful lot of fun. I really enjoy this. When you cut around, you just kind of feed it with your other hand. So I'm cutting with my right and I'm feeding with my left. We're going to just chuck that out the way. And I now very quickly have 4 identical circles. They don't all have to be identical, but it's really nice to have in every project that you do, if you need it, having 4 that are the same size. So we've already landed up quite quickly with 4 beautiful circles. You'll have to check out all the other videos as we go on what to do with these circles. These are going to be for collages, earrings, etc. I'll do an example in a minute, just so for those of you who haven't seen my other videos, what that kind of entails. But if you can imagine, just the 4 pieces just makes it, I don't know if you can actually hear it cutting through. And I just pile them up there like that. I'm going to keep going. So I have another piece of fabric here. It's not very straight. It has a few kinks in it. So I'm going to fold it in half and in half again. If there's a piece that's short, for example here, it doesn't reach the end, you have to decide how precious this fabric is and how much of it you want. If you don't want to waste any, you might fold it up slightly differently. You might cut it in half and then fold that into 4 so that's that size, and then you can fold that into 4 and the circles will be slightly bigger. But if you're not too fussed because you have more fabric than you know what to do with, then you just don't worry about that, but you know that that's there. So I'm going to cut that in half like I did with the other one, and I'm going to cut it in half again, and the reason I do that is only now will it form a really nice flat edge, whereas if I'm cutting this, I'm dealing with that. Again, I'll show you, we cut it and it's now nice and flat, and then I'm going to cut a nice circle out of this one. I'm just turning it with my left hand. They don't need to be straight. I'm going to purposefully cut some quite crooked in a minute so that you can get an idea. The underneath one was folded, so we're going to cut that, and we are now back to folding with 4 lovely pieces of fabric. I'm not going to go any details here because there are so many things that we can make with it, but can you imagine if we're making a collage or a pair of earrings, we're starting to really get some lovely 3D things happening here. So that's the kind of thing that we would use circles for. You can put, we might be making earrings that would look like that, or a pendant. We might be mixing it with green. Those are some lovely colours together. We've got some turquoise circles here that we're going to add to. These will just pop in the bag, and later on we'll make some really fun stuff out of those. So that's cutting freehand.